Hey there, Rachel Cook here, business growth strategist for women entrepreneurs. And I wanted to jump on today. This is not my regular day to jump on and do a Facebook Live with you, but I wanted to jump on today because after last week's Facebook Live, all about creating your big enough business and why a big enough business is truly the key to designing a business and life that you love, so that you actually have time for a life. I got a lot of questions, and it's so interesting that sometimes we hear something like big enough business, and on one hand, we feel like it gives us a sense of relief, like, okay, we don't have to be building, the next Facebook in order to be successful. And on the other hand, it can be confusing because it can make you feel like maybe you're not dreaming big enough. So I wanted to kind of find that middle ground and help everyone who listened to that episode, or if you're just finding me for the first time, I wanted to dive into the specific numbers around a six-figure business, because the truth is, once you break it down, I think it becomes a lot easier, a lot less stressful, and a lot more attainable. So I'm trying to give just a minute or two for people to join me. Don't know how much of a delay that I have, but I will go ahead and kick off today's mini-sode. So today we are diving into a brand new topic. So first of all, welcome. I'm Rachel Cook, your host for Uncomplicate Your Business, a weekly show where I share how you can keep things simple and strategic to design a business and life on your terms. Today, we're breaking it all down and talking about the numbers. We're going to talk about exactly what it means to have a six-figure business. So let's kind of dive right on in. If you happen to catch last week's episode on a big enough business, then maybe you went through the process I shared with you to figure out what size your big enough business is. And there were really two parts to determining the size of your big enough business. This is the business that is the perfect size for you so that you can enjoy your life, right? Now, this is a jumping off point. It doesn't mean your big enough business can't grow. And in last week's episode, I talked a lot about the growth trajectory my big enough business has gone as I've grown as an entrepreneur, as I've transitioned different life stages, as things have kind of shifted and evolved for me personally. And one of the things that I always tell people to come back to when they're trying to figure out what size business makes sense for them is first, how much time and energy do you have available for that business? Because while there are some people who honestly, they have the time and energy to work 80 hours a week and they have no major obligations, maybe they're younger in their 20s, like they can still live with roommates and they really don't have a lot of obligations that are pressuring them. Once you get a little bit further along in your life journey, that might change. And maybe you no longer have 80 hours a week. Maybe you just simply don't have the energy. Maybe you're dealing with some health conditions or some challenges. Maybe you've got kids or aging parents you're taking care of. Like, not all of us have that time available to work like that in order to grow our business. So that's a big piece of the big enough business is, what's your bandwidth? Like, how much capacity do you actually have? And the other part of it is, how much do you need in order to sustain yourself? How much do you need to take home to pay yourself from your business? And this is an important question to ask yourself. And this leads us to our conversation today, diving into the numbers, the math behind a six-figure business. Because often what I hear from people is they crunch the numbers and they think, okay, my last salary was $40,000 a year. So that's what I want to make in my business. My business needs to make $40,000 a year. And it might make sense, right? Not so much. Wrong. $40,000 a year in top line revenue, so total of what your business brings in, does not equal what you take home and pay yourself. And if you've been in business for a while, you know this. You realize that it costs money to run a business. You have to pay taxes to run a business. What you pay yourself is often just whatever is left over, right? And that means people who only set the bar for a $40,000 business or a $50,000 business thinking, well, that's what my salary was, or that's comfortable enough for me, I don't need to ask for more. The problem is they set themselves up where their business does not have enough margin to pay for them to to sustain their lifestyle, to just give them what they need in order to keep the business moving forward. So that's why I wanted to talk about breaking down the numbers for a six-figure business, because at the end of last week's episode, I said, whatever you need to sustain yourself, whatever your take-home pay needs to be, you really want to double that to reach your business revenue goal for the year. Now, I'm going to share with you guys some things that I learned from an incredible book called Profit First. And I'm hoping you can read my chicken scratch handwriting here. Looks like the top part isn't quite going the way I had wanted. Let's find another page here. So the book I want to reference today, this is actually from a man, Mike Michalowicz, who I think is just amazing. He's somebody who's just so smart, and everything he shares is so practical and so useful and helpful. And it's the book Profit First. This is actually the old version of the book. This is the new version that came out this year. I have both versions. You can tell I am a super fan of his methodology, his Profit First methodology. And his methodology for Profit First, basically, it goes something like this. Most people, profit is what's left over at the end of the year after they've paid for everything else. And that's why they don't have any profit in their business. Their business doesn't actually have any profit left over. But in his methodology, you put profit first, okay? You take out your, in the case of a six-figure business, you're going to take out your 5% profit first, okay? You pay that out first. And then you come down and you start portioning off the rest of what's coming in. So 15% goes to taxes. 30% goes to operations. And operations means whatever it costs to run your business. So whatever technology you need, whatever team you need to pay, whatever tools or hardware, like if you're a photographer, your operations includes the cost of all your cameras and all your gear and all your equipment and your website and your hosting and whatever tool you're using to send invoices. That all goes under the operations line. And finally, 50% is owner pay. Now this, once you start to see this breakdown, this is why I said in the Big Enough Business episode last week, you want to start with what you want to pay yourself, right? Your take-home pay goal, and then double it. Because a healthy business needs to run on something. It can't run on fumes. You're going to have expenses. You're going to have to pay taxes. And ideally, you're setting aside a little chunk every single month for profits. And that way, you can do a couple things. You can reinvest into your business. You can give yourself a nice bonus every quarter or every year. I mean, there's your trip to Disney. There's your renovation for your kitchen. You know, when you are looking at this perspective as set up by Profit First, it really changes the game and lets you know how much you can spend in these different areas of your business. So let's actually get a little bit more detailed about this. And I'm going to erase this piece. This is so fun. I learned all about using this little whiteboard thing from my friend Greg over at Systemly, and I think it's really cool. So let's go into breaking these numbers down and actually looking at what that percentage breakdown looks like. Well, again, I had a lot of people who were like, well, I just need $50,000 or $40,000. They're thinking in terms of maybe their last salary, their last take-home salary. So here's a problem with a 50K goal as your revenue. I'm not saying it's a terrible goal. I'm saying you need to know what the numbers look like as a business, okay? So that means you have, for your profit, that's $2,500 profit. So that would be your bonus at the end of the year. That would be reinvesting back into your business, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to be paying somewhere around $7,500 for taxes. And of course, this is based on his system, which is based on US accounting. I cannot help anybody when it comes to outside of the US, but this is what you could expect. Excuse me. Then you'd have about $15,000 for operations. Now, I've been running a business for over 10 years now. I can tell you that running a business on only $15,000 a year of operations, that can get eaten up very quickly. Just your website hosting and having, the tools that you need, that could quickly become a couple $100s a month. So there's not a lot of room here to hire a team or to upgrade your business in these different areas. And finally, your take-home pay for $50,000 would be somewhere around $25,000 a year. So $25,000 owner pay a year. That is not a lot to be sustaining yourself, honestly. And if you wanted to break it down even more, I did a quick calculation that was based on if you took 4 weeks off a year, so you were working 48 weeks a year, and then you were averaging 25 hours a week, which is what a lot of people I talk to, that's what they have available. That means you're really getting paid about $20 an hour. Right? So that's where you're at. For all the work that you're putting in, you're getting paid about $20 an hour. That could be a little tough to swallow and honestly not very sustainable for a lot of people, especially if you are a dual income household. Like, hello, that is the reality for so many of us. Dual income households, like most people, it takes 2 people to work in order to sustain a comfortable lifestyle. It might not work for you if you have other obligations. I remember when all 3 of my children were in preschool, not in public school, and we were paying for preschool, there were some months where I was paying nearly $2,000 a month just for preschool. I would be earning $50,000 a year in my business just to pay $2,000 a month in preschool and not have a whole heck of a lot left over. So that's why I say we have to start getting really realistic about this and understand what do the numbers look like so we can understand how to set the right goals, how to be appropriate in the way that we approach our business, or else we're going to find ourselves on that fast path to burnout when we realize, okay, I'm paying for preschool, I'm paying the mortgage, and that's all I can really cover because it's just too expensive. My business isn't set up to really support us the way that you had maybe anticipated. So let's go back in here and let's look at, let me find a different color here that's maybe brighter. Let's look at if you were aiming at the actual 6-figure number. So you're going to break 100,000 this year. That's your goal. And this is what we're talking about, the numbers of $100,000 a year business. It might seem unattainable. And yes, the statistics show that a very small percentage, especially of women business owners, actually hit that $100,000 a year. In fact, it can be as little as, I believe it's like 12% of women business owners only hit $100,000 or more a year. So what does that look like from the profit first perspective? Well, if we're looking at 5% profit, that means we've got $5,000 in profit. That means at the end of the year, you pay yourself half of that, you reinvest half of that back into your business. It's your business slush fund. That's nice, right? Like, wouldn't it be awesome to write yourself a bonus check for $2,500? That's a vacation. You pay taxes. So you can expect to be doing about $15,000 approximately. You have operations costs of $30,000. Now we're talking about getting to the area where you can actually afford to get some help. I mean, with $30,000 available in your budget to invest into the right technology, to use the right tools and the right gear and the right equipment, to have people who can help you. I mean, you could very easily have 1 or 2 people on your team helping you part-time and only pay like $500, $1,000 a month. We talked about this all in the Dream Team episode of Uncomplicate Your Business over on the podcast. So that $30,000 can go a heck of a long way in getting the support that you need so that you can get out of the weeds in your business, so that you can really be focused on your zone of genius and what you do best, instead of hanging out in your inbox and dealing with invoices and following up with people. Like it's a lot that you can use to really give yourself more freedom in your business. And then, then you get that 50% take home. And this gets you closer to where a lot of people were saying their business revenue goal was, which was to replace their original salary. So now we're talking about a $50,000 salary. And you can see these percentages, they work in Profit First, he actually breaks it down. These percentages are what he has seen after working with consulting, probably hundreds of thousands of businesses, or doing the research around it. Again, Profit First, amazing book, highly, highly recommend. These percentages work all the way up to a $250,000 a year business. Okay. So what I love about this is it gives you a framework as to how do you invest your money? Where do things go? How do you figure out what you should spend on your business in order to get it running? And this is one reason why I think $100,000 a year business makes sense for so many people as their goal, because it actually is enough to give you that take-home revenue that if you're a dual income household, or you're a single parent, or you're responsible for a lot more, like now we're getting closer to actually paying you what you really deserve. And on an hourly basis, this is where you're getting closer to a $40 an hour, after everything is paid, what you put in your pocket is closer to $40 an hour, compared to only $20 an hour for working, the same amount. So this is where I think a lot of us can start to raise the level of our big enough business a little bit higher. And this is where I'd love to see more women entrepreneurs be part of that 12% who break the six-figure mark in their business. It will lead to more sustainability. It will lead to being able to get more support. It will lead to being able to invest in the right tools and the right systems and the right structures, because believe it or not, you will probably work less in this $100,000 business than you would in a $50,000 a year business, mainly because now you have funds available to get help. And that's just not possible when you don't have the bandwidth when you don't have that available in your budget. So let's look at one more thing I want to show you guys. And I'm just going to bring up a whole new little piece of paper. And this is the math of, now that you kind of see the numbers and how the percentages work out, you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, well, how do I do that? Because right now it just feels really overwhelming and not possible for me. Well, I'm here to tell you it is actually possible for a lot of people, especially if, and this is the women that I tend to work with most, if you are a service provider, okay? So maybe you're a photographer, maybe you're a wedding planner, maybe you're a website designer, maybe you're a copywriter. You have an incredible service you can offer, okay? You're offering your experience and your expertise. Or you're some sort of teacher. I have a lot of yoga teachers or coaches, health coaches, wellness coaches, sleep coaches for babies. We've had doulas and midwives, all sorts of people who take what I'm about to share with you and apply it into their business to create that more sustainable business where you can afford to invest in some systems and support and a team. So let's look at the math of a six-figure business real quick, because this is one that I think can confuse a lot of people and make you feel like it's just not possible. I can't do that. So the first thing that I think you need to look at is, what are you offering and what are the price points you're looking at? The challenge with a business that's not offering the right products and the right services at the right price point is you set yourself up to work way too hard. And in this current entrepreneurial space, we hear a lot of people who say something like this. They say something like, start off with a $50 product, okay? And then you start building out a $100 product. And then maybe eventually you get up to creating a $1,000 product, right? That's what a lot of people tell you, is to start small and then stair-step people all the way up. Well, here's where that's a challenge, is in order to make any of these a six-figure business on their own, this is, sales up here. How many people do you actually have to sell in order to get that? You have to sell 2,000 of that $50 product, or you have to sell 1,000 of that $100 product, or you even have to sell 100 of that $1,000 product. Okay. So my question back to a lot of you guys, and for you to really think about, is, could I sell that many given where your business is? For a lot of people, the answer is no. And the reason the answer is going to be no is because you have to understand some more math. We're going to go on a 2% conversion rate. So industry average, if you were to sell, offer that $50,000 or that $50 product, and you're going to have to go out there and promote it, only 2% of the people, probably even less, 2% is maybe high. The average is 1 to 2%. So maybe 1 or 2% of the people who hear about it are going to buy it. So that means if you need 2,000 sales of that $50 product, you need to get it in front of 100,000 people. 100,000 people. That is a lot of people that you have to get in front of. Do you have an email list that big? Do you have that much website traffic? I don't. I definitely don't. If you were looking at $100 products, you still have to get in front of 50,000 people. And even for a $1,000 product that you're trying to make 100 sales that year, you still have to get that in front of 5,000 people. 5,000 people, that is a lot, especially if you don't have a ton of traffic to your website, especially if you don't have a massive email list, especially if you're in the first couple of years of your business. Like, let's just get real. The first few years of your business, I rarely see people who come out the gate with thousands of people on their email list unless they're coming from another business or they just happen to already know a lot about online marketing and list building, et cetera, et cetera. So let's look at a different option here. Instead of going for the high volume model, which honestly is very difficult. It requires you to be a ninja when it comes to online marketing. It requires you to be an excellent copywriter. It requires you to be an amazing traffic generator. It requires you to be really good at online sales, which honestly, a lot of people aren't because there is so much you have to learn. So instead of going for a high volume model, let's flip it around and let's look at a lower volume model. So instead, let's look at something that's $2,500, okay? $2,500, a program or a service that is $2,500 only requires about 40 people a year. This was the first price point on any coaching I offered. It was $2,500 for 6 months to work with me one-on-one every other week. It ended up for over 6 months. It was something like 12 sessions one-on-one that are hour long, plus a 2-hour deep dive session. So a total of 14 hours, plus, some extra in between helping, checking in, email coaching, et cetera, et cetera. But it was $2,500 or $500 a month. So they got that little discount for paying in full. That was my first coaching package. And it was really helpful because it meant I just needed to enroll 20 people at like January, and then another 20 people mid-year. And suddenly I hit 6 figures very quickly because I had a clear package where the math worked out. Now, maybe for you, this might seem really, really high. It might seem like, I don't know if I have anything I could offer for $2,500. Is that too big of a package or of a service? You have to really think about this because the math works. And honestly, if you are an expert, if you have a lot of experience, if you have expertise, chances are you can come up with something that's going to be around the $2,000, $2,500 to even a $5,000 price point. And a $5,000 price point really works well for people who are makers. So people who are creating websites or doing photography, et cetera, et cetera. If you're delivering something, it can feel a little easier to actually reach up to that $5,000 price point. But again, you only need 20 people the whole year. Like if you're brand new into websites, could you do, 20 websites a year? If you're a brand new wedding photographer, could you do 20 weddings a year? It is more possible. Now the numbers start to make more sense. And even on top of that, this is how many sales you'd have to make. So how many people you'd have to have hire you for your services. And these numbers are going to be more service-based. Okay, these aren't going to be numbers that are coming out from a online program out the gate. Again, unless you have a ridiculous amount of experience and expertise online. For most of these are going to be a range around for doing a service. And again, when you break down that conversion rate, how many people do you need to get this offering in front of, right? Or how many people do you need to potentially have on your list? Now we'll talk about this, but with using that same 2% conversion rate, so we're still comparing, apples to apples and not apples to oranges. If you were just to promote this via, let's say, online marketing and an email list and social media, then we're talking about For a $2,500 offering that you're trying to get 40 people into, you need a list of 2,000 people. $5,000, you need a list of 1,000 people. Now, the cool thing here, guys, is when you start looking at how you can really get the most out of offering your higher end programs and higher end services, is this 2% is actually not correct. Because chances are, if you're, let's say, doing websites for somebody, okay, let's say you're doing websites for people and that's your business, you're a maker, you're actually delivering a product, then, usually people are going to talk to you. They're going to come to you more high touch, not via a email list. And so chances are you're going to have more conversations with potential clients. Usually we see up to a 25% conversion rate. Okay. So that means you don't really need a big list in order to sell 40 people into a $2,500 offering, because you're usually talking to them in a more high touch way, which converts much, much higher. And I have to say, you don't have to be some sort of sales ninja in order for that to work. You just have to be willing to have conversations and going into them knowing that, hey, 1 in 4 people is probably going to sign up for this. And as you get better at those conversations, as you get better at positioning your offering, as you get better at filtering what you're doing and really helping the right people take that next step to getting on the phone with you, you'll maybe even see that go up to, 50% or higher people getting on the phone and signing up to work with you. And same thing for this other number here. So instead of needing, 1,000 people, you only maybe need 250 people. You can start to see how the numbers work here and why it is possible to get to a 6-figure business much faster when you focus on higher end offerings. So these are going to be more like services or more high touch programs. So maybe a coaching program or a teaching program. These are going to be higher end. And it's actually one of the best ways to build a solid baseline revenue and to set yourself up for success in the first couple of years in your business. And over again, I have seen with my clients that when they start this way with more high touch and with higher price points, what they also do by getting these clients in and building in the revenue that they need, they give themselves a runway, okay? A runway where they can now figure out things like, how do I build an email list? How do I create an online program? How do I create a group coaching program? How do I launch something for the first time? It is a lot easier to start with high touch offerings, programs, and services, because it's what we naturally all know how to do. Going into these leveraged and passive things, it sounds great, but I often see that it really takes a couple of years for people to figure out enough of all the moving parts of that in order for those to become 6-figure businesses. So I hope this helps you see as we, go through all of the nitty-gritty pieces of what goes into a 6-figure business. Let's look at the numbers for a 6-figure business, looking at both the profit first percentages. And if you just are hearing this, just hit rewind and go back to the beginning where I talk about the profit first percentages so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, how you need to really budget your business to make sure you have enough profitability and you have enough revenue coming in to have the systems, to have the support, to have the technology, so that you are not being, a one-woman show doing every single thing. And instead, you can stay focused on your zone of genius and pay yourself really well, okay? And the second half of that is, don't go into business thinking that, you're going to build a 6-figure business on a $50 product or a $100 product, unless you have a large email list, you are really good at getting a lot of traffic, and you already understand all of the skills that go into selling things at scale, which most of us don't. Most of us don't. I didn't. It's taken many, many years to learn how to do that. And even now, I still prefer doing higher end, higher touch offerings because it's a lot easier. It's a lot less stress. And it allows me to spend my time in my zone of genius. So I hope that helps you. Let me know if it does. And if you know somebody who could benefit from hearing this little breakdown of a six-figure business, make sure you share today's live with them. And if you love this and you know that you want more insight and more information on how you can design a predictably profitable business, whether that is, $50,000 a year or $500,000 a year, the framework is the exact same. And I've created a brand new 100% free masterclass that you can check out over at yoursweetspotstrategy.com. Okay, guys, I will be back on Thursday at 12 at noon Eastern, and that is 9 a.m. Pacific, to dive into the next part of this whole series around designing predictably profitable businesses. We're going to be talking about your stress to dollar ratio and how to make sure you're designing your offerings so that you're not running yourself ragged. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.